You good? All right, so let's call to order, open the meeting with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, attendance, Leo Mascola here, Eileen Bronco,
Here.
AJ Bordes here, Tommy Kieran here, Cool here. And we have a new member, Davina Santiago, as an alternate. Welcome. So the,
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes
So moved.
from last January 19th, 2022. All in favor? Aye. Tommy. All right. Approved, so we got 602. First one is 605. You got
No, we can go, there's no public hearing tonight.
nothing, so we'll just jump right in. All right, so on the, on our agenda, we have the livestock is number one. We're gonna switch it up. We're gonna put the Bosco Drive solar panel project discussion first. So I'm gonna, I'd like to open up the discussion with all the commissioners and, you know, let me start here and really, we want to review kind of everything where all the commissions, we have a positive referral. The date on the planning commission was 11/3/21. That was positive, as well as the police commission. So we want to start off by reviewing the conditions.
Well, we could do a couple just things first of what you received tonight, which was you did at the last meeting, Jim Stewart was not at the meeting, but I do have his letter to the commission where he had his conditions, and if you want him now to address anything that he had from that meeting, that would be up to you. The second thing is he did provide me today with a certification of the soil and erosion plan.
Okay. You guys want to address? That's not good.
Okay,
Why
so,
don't we start with that? Go ahead, Jim.
so I mean, jump in if you have any questions.
Yep.
Okay, so I watched the video and Steve Trinkus did have good comments throughout, you know, not to minimize anything he did, because he did a lot of good work and he came up with some good suggestions, a lot of which were incorporated in the plans. He did, during your last meeting, talk about level spreaders and underneath the solar panels. And I agree with him, in a perfect world, level spreaders are level. In this case, they're not running the solar panels perpendicular or parallel to the grade. So, I mean, you could eliminate them completely. I think that they're going to provide some benefit. They're not collecting a lot of water like the detention ponds. So I think that they're going to provide significant benefit to the project, because the water, where it falls, as the panels drop, if it falls on the uphill side, they'll run down the grade and hit a level spreader and pool up in. So I think the level spreader, additional retainage of water, they'll slow down the water going across the hills. And in addition, Steve brought up the fact that the water would run down the slope. They're not level, the water will run down the stones and then pile up. So, and so what I suggested is that they add cutoff walls, which is what we do when we install sewers. Similar things happen when you install a sewer. You put the stone around the pipe, and groundwater flows up and it rushes down the pipe until it gets to the bottom of the hill, and then it blows out through the road. So what they do is they install cutoff walls to slow it down. And that's what I'm suggesting, and that's what they put in their plan. So every I don't know, 20 feet, they were going to put in a cutoff wall to stop the water from rushing down. So that was a solution that I think is very reasonable, and I think it's beneficial rather than just limiting them altogether. The other level spreaders he talked about was at the end of the detention ponds. He talked about how the water is going to rush down. It's going to find the lowest spot and just come out through there. Well, that is a problem with level spreaders. They're built with rock, and you're never going to perfectly perfect. So there's always a little area where the first bit of water trickles over. And if it's a small storm and there's a little trickle, it's not as big a deal. As soon as you get a significant storm where there's a lot of water, now the level spreader starts to work as it's designed. So the water will spread out and do it. And again, the other option is not to have one. So I think it's far better to have one. And that's just the way they work. They're not perfect. In a dam, you pour a concrete wall to make it perfectly level, but you don't do it in situations like this. And you got to remember that the whole system is based off a grass area, and they designed it as impervious. So you don't have the same needs, as far as I see it, to treat the water, because you don't have parking lots and you don't have buildings, and you're not storing chemicals and any of those things. So anyway, he talked about the swales around the facility. So what happens is in the center there's all the solar panels, and around the outside what they have is they have a swale to collect the runoff as it runs off the site. And those swales go in either directions to the two detention ponds. And so he said that the swales now have piles of rocks, basically, and to slow down the flow and to catch sediment as it trails. And he said that those were filled to the top of the swale, which they're not. There's a void there for the water to go over. In addition to that, the design includes the road outside the swale, which is pitched towards the swale. And there's also a shoulder on the road, which is pitched towards the swale again. So if that swale were to ever overflow, it's got to overflow the shoulder of the road. It's got to overflow the 12-foot road that's there before it ever gets over the top and discharges over the top of that road, getting to any properties that are on the other side. And given the fact that it's grass to begin with, and it's grass now, my feeling is those neighbors, if they get water, they would have got a lot more water before the project, because it would have been nothing stopping all that water from running in that direction. So I discussed the detention ponds. He talked about the dam safety in his letter. I'm not sure he brought it up during the meeting. So I spoke to, it's been a long time since I was done this stuff, but I spoke to dam safety, and the way it used to be that I recall is the way he's describing it, is that if it's over a 4-foot fill, 4 feet of water, it's dam, and that's a problem. And what I discussed with them, and they said, well, we meet with everybody. And I said, well, I want your, give me your, what do you use as a guideline so that we can make sure that when people build things, they're not dams, because we don't want necessarily it. They said, well, everything is a dam. If they impound water, it's a dam. It's just what level of dam, what the hazard level is. And they said, well, the lowest hazard is, I don't know, it's a certain amount of, holds a certain amount of water, and or it has something downstream that if the dam were to fail, there'd be an issue. There's a house right there. There's a street right there. There's a school right there. There's something right below the dam that if it fails, it's going to cause a problem, in which case it would be more of a significant hazard. So, and I don't remember exactly what they told me. I think it was 2 acre-feet of water, which is a lot of water, which I believe they're way underneath that amount of water. I don't think that there's a hazard directly downwind. So I don't think they're going to be one of the hazard levels that's going to require a DEP permit. But DEP is going to look at it and they're going to determine it. And if they determine that, they're going to review the plans and they're going to make sure that they meet any construction standards if they think that they're not being them. But again, I'm not worried about that. Then there's the sediment erosion control plan. I looked at their plan. I think that they meet the plan. Again, there's lots of ways that you can stop sediment erosion control. I don't think that they have a big problem because again, it's not a lot of parking lots. They're not taking runoff off parking lots. They're not doing a lot of earth moving. Yeah, they're clearing some land, but they're not moving hundreds of thousands of yards of material where you have, a lot of it. I think they've met it. That's why I gave you the certification. But again, they're over that 5 acre limit. So they're gonna have to go to DEP, they're gonna have to discuss it with them, and they're gonna have to make sure they're happy. So DEP is gonna again review it, they're not gonna look at my certification and say, oh, Stewart loves it, we love it. They're gonna go through it, they're gonna make sure it meets their standards, and they're gonna apply anything in addition they think is needed. So I'm not worried there. And then the last thing that they talked about a lot, which, I don't wanna be, I'm gonna leave, as he said, the soft standards up to you guys, because I wanna be an engineer, and if there's property values, anything like that, I look to you guys to do it, and I'm gonna look to you guys to deal with the plants and all that stuff. If you want my help, I'll be here, I'll help you, but I'm gonna let you guys, I'm gonna make sure they follow the regs, but you guys can be the ones to say there's not enough plants, or there's too many, or whatever else. The one thing that he said was the view that they created, the plants, wasn't accurate. And I have to say, I kind of agree with them, because it is uphill. And I think that if you were out there, that grade goes up fairly quickly. So I think initially, they're not gonna put tall enough plants in there to guard all those solar panels. So I think a few of those neighbors, especially the ones with the garden furniture in there, probably are gonna see these things, at least until the plants grow, maybe longer. So that's the only thing I wanted you to say. And if you have any other questions about what his reports, certainly ask me.
Very good.
Okay.
Questions?
There was a lot of questions with regards to the retaining wall itself and the material that's made out of there, worried about the rain being able to potentially break it, I guess. Because they basically, during, I don't know if it's the last discussion or the one before that, they specifically called out that should there be a 100-year rainstorm or something like that, the material that retaining wall or whatever was not going to be able to withstand that, is the force of the water. Is that with the additions that you just mentioned, where every 20 feet they're putting in that barricade, is that going to?
I'm not sure. I don't think it's a retaining wall. I'm not sure what they meant. I don't recall with the conversation. I mean, they may have been talking about the detention ponds.
No, it was that.
Oh, the swale.
Yeah.
The swale. Again, I think the swales, fine for the amount of water they have. And again, they have that road that's 12 feet wide. It's pitched towards us. So you have 12 and 5 is 17, and then the swale is 7 feet. So 21 feet of area that's sloped towards the facility before it goes over top. And then they had to regrade the area towards one of the ponds because the low area in the road was pitched so that if that swale filled up and backed up, it would go over to the neighbor. So they redesigned that. So now if the swale overflows and the road overflows, it'll overflow into the pond and continue to work through it. So I mean, 100-year storm is pretty significant. I mean, it's designed to withstand it. And I don't think that the pond will, or the pond will, those walls or the embankment walls will give up, because normally that happens when a pond is filled for days and weeks, and the water can start to seep through. or does it, or overtops in an area where it can scour out the bank. In that case, he's got a spillway, so it's not going to overtop like that. I don't think, and it's going to empty fairly quickly within a couple days or a day or two. So I don't think that it's going to be an issue as they're saying.
I'm good.
I have a question, Tim, you mentioned the plantings early.
Mhm.
What do you have in mind? What are you suggesting? That's a you're an engineer, so what do you suggest?
I mean, we could look at the plants that they're putting in, but speaker there. They're putting in blue spruces and
What page on, Jim, so that you can refer to?
LL1.
Height and
Which are
installed.
25 feet, so these things are going to 25, 30 feet, so I mean, I don't think you necessarily need something that's going to be bigger than that, because you can start putting white pines, and then you're going to be really tall, but you're not going to, you're going to see right through them, so I think it's a.
What's the total elevation from the property, from the neighbor's property to the top of the hill or the top of the tallest?
So the panels are, let's say, 635 in the area where these houses are. And the properties are down at, just guessing,
Is there gonna be a fence too?
615.
You said it's 635, where are the top of the?
Well, then you gotta add another 10 feet for the panel, because apparently they're 9 or 10 feet tall, so.
It's roughly about 30 feet of elevation change from the property, from the residence to the top of the.
Probably, you know, I would say,
I think one of the comments was is that the spruces would grow high. It would take time for them to grow significantly high, but the other thing is that the branches down low are not always thick. So the visibility right under could be a problem. That's what a comment, if I remember correctly.
On SP1 or SP0, I am seeing opposite the house at Farmstead Lane. It looks like you're in that 620 to 620. Is that 615 to 620 range? And I'm seeing 625 opposite that on the topography, correct? Of where the panels are.
yeah, initially, yep. Initially, but then it ramps up to 6 on the other side, 630
Towards the,
Yeah.
towards the other.
towards the other side, so.
And then, like you said, up to 635.
And it also depends, it depends where you're standing. If you're
Yeah.
standing next to a
That's- I was thinking
25-foot
that.
tree, you're not gonna see,
Yeah.
you're not seeing anything. Maybe if you're in your bedroom, you can see it. So, you need more of a study to see how far back you have to walk before you'd see anything. I mean, certainly at maturity, I think a 25-foot tree probably would hide it. You're only talking about a 30-foot difference, so it's considering the angle of what you're looking, you probably would tree.
What's the time frame? You know? Anybody know? From 6 feet to 25 feet?
Well, it's a quarter to a year, yeah.
Well, then.
You made it.
You said it.
Eileen, any questions for Jim?
That was a question of mine of additional shrubbery.
So do we think we should add additional shrubbery or, I mean, what's?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you which shrubs, you know.
Yeah, you gotta work it. Everything. Right, look. And watch, they grow fast. Fast and wide. Yeah. Just imagine.
Any other questions for Jim?
Nice job, well, thank you.
I do have a question. I guess you can answer the question. Underground power lines, it was brought up briefly. But that's doable. Yes? or no?
I think from the panels they're talking, right?
Certainly, you could.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
rather than having
underground,
power
absolutely.
lines up above, running all the way down to the street.
Yeah, what they propose is using an existing pole line that comes up to the.
No, I think she's talking about in the solar array itself.
No.
Or are you talking about from the street to the,
However they need power.
You mean from the driveway?
Right, I mean,
Street all the way to
I-
the driveway.
Yeah, I mean, if it's existing, but that,
to connect to the power grid? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, originally I pointed that out. I said, if you're gonna run a new pole line, it probably should be underground like it is in the subdivision regulations. But they pointed out that they're connecting to an existing line, pole line that is within.
Yeah, I think there are existing poles on that street now, on the private street.
I mean, they are going, I would say several hundred feet at least above ground.
so a condition can be if any new lines are needed, they could be underground. Yeah,
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
But you could go underground and then up. and
Oh,
then-
yeah, absolutely. They could go to the pole and they could go up the pole.
But there is no, my only concern with that is because it is a private road, I don't know how the ownership, I mean, it is land that goes all the way out. But usually there's right of ways and all that when you're doing the subdivision.
Yeah, I mean, power company's gonna need an easement for that, and there have to be, they'll do their own drawings. It is underground, so my understanding of that, Trent was that they're connecting to the existing lines, right, the existing pole line.
There are some existing poles, they may
And then they're
need to add
extending
a
that
couple.
line, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if what they need to add is where there's nothing now.
Is there a print, is there something on the print, the site plan shows that?
Yeah, SP1.
Okay, what does it exactly show?
There's a pole line coming off of Prodell Road through the backyards of the people on the
Bosco Drive.
on the south of Bosco Drive. And then they pick up the pole line and go further.
Okay, so the existing pole line goes through they set the property and then they pick it up and are moving it further. Is that?
Well,
up
they,
to
yeah,
where
they
the-
add
to
additional
where they-
poles, they're gonna be adding, it looks like, well, they're showing 2 poles. But they may need more than that.
Is there what's the positives for the underground versus continuing above ground line? What's the from your engineering?
Aesthetics, mostly, I would say, I mean, main utilities, you know, we like below ground, we think it's got less maintenance, but utilities kind of are on a fence about that. Yes, less during the storm, but long term, it's difficult, more difficult to maintain if there's a problem, and more corrosion and more problems with an underground. You don't know where the problem is when the problem happens, so. But I wouldn't shy away from making it a condition if that's what you want.
Flintstones?
How long would they, the distance, how far is the distance?
Not scale, do you?
No.
No?
So it looks like there is a pole in front of, or just to the left of, the last house. And then where you see it goes OH, I guess that's overhead. It is then going up.
Yeah, so it's probably 400 to 500 feet above ground. And which is probably
From
about-
Crodell.
Both. It's from Crodell and then from Crodell to, or from the end to the project.
And that's running up their driveway, the 2 new poles.
No,
No.
it's running along the northern property line, so.
Yeah.
So
It roughly crosses where the gate is. Remember where that
Yep.
gate is at the bottom? There is a pole that's on one side. It's going to cross the gate towards where the mobile home site is. It'll go across that, and then it looks like there's a pole there, and then it goes up to one other pole, which is at the top where their box is, or their junction, their power. Because it looks like there and there.
I can't tell from that.
So it's not in the road.
Right.
Would it require crossing someone else's property to go underground? Would it require that?
Potentially it could, only at where it goes from the pole that's in front of that house.
Hmm.
It crosses the private road overhead, over the gate, and then goes onto the parcel on that side, which I believe is part of the main parcel, the big parcel. And then it goes up the side of that, through the woods there. And then up to the top. And then their 30 by 20 area where they're,
So basically
Concrete
running
side.
along the mobile home park.
Yeah, for
I
parking
don't
lot?
think the mobile home park runs down that far. I think the mobile home park was more up here. Look at the satellite. So I could show you each. The last house that I'm referring to, this one here,
Mhm.
there's a pole roughly in this area. This right around here is where the gate is. So it comes from here over to here and then up to here.
That's what you were saying, something about the mobile home.
Yeah.
parks, That's what you were
Well,
saying.
the mobile home park, a couple of these, and then
Okay.
only, I do believe there's only these that people live in. This is not, this might be, the same. These two business sites. But this is the slope that you go on the hill and street. To get to.
One and two?
This one exists,
Okay,
and then it goes over to the Buffalo Public Gate, which is this area, and then it goes up to here.
so the two new ones will be.
That I saw in the drawing will be here. in this area.
Is that where you thought? That's sort of where you thought.
Yeah,
That's what-
yeah.
I thought that's what you were referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it comes out here, crosses over to here, over the. That's probably.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the slope.
Yeah.
That's the drive. So this is Bosco Drive.
Yeah, okay.
All right, and this house exists. There's a pole here, that crosses over it. Up to it. So if you look on SB1, you'll see that. It refers to the pole numbers that exist over here.
So I would say underground.
Yeah, first pole makes sense because you're still in a heavily wooded area and all that stuff. Second pole, you're right up against that property.
Yeah.
So I would leave the first pole alone, and then from there they can go to the ground and then cut to where they got it.
That sounds fine, if they can do it. Doesn't somebody have to say, yes, you can do this, and no, you can't?
If it requires, if it's requiring the applicant to do something that is incapable of doing, such as he has to cross another person's property, then it's
That
not
looks like
properly a condition.
That looks like it could go through somebody's property.
I can't help it.
Yeah, I'm not just eyeballing that paper, that's all. That's just my opinion.
You know, wouldn't it still be the same thing if they're putting a pole in place? You're still putting a pole on somebody's property.
It depends on where. On where the extension wires, but what you could do is you could, wherever you get to the finish line here, is you can condition the applicant to investigate the feasibility of putting underground cabling from the point that you mentioned, Commissioner.
The point in the
Point
array.
of commissioner, whatever it is, your point, you're gonna decide.
Well, the first pole is which one?
So there's two poles up there. There's one pole where it stops, then it cuts over the driveway, and then there's a second pole as well. That first pole, keep that one in place. It's still in the heavily wooded area, so there's not gonna be much there. And then at that first pole, put the underground receptacle.
That goes up the hill that
Yeah.
gets to the power.
Yep.
You're saying.
Is there wells there? That's all well water up there? We're gonna start
I'm
playing with
not
that?
sure how the mobile home park is serviced with water.
Maybe a community, well,
Yeah, it could be.
community septic.
That would be hard.
Yeah, I don't think that would be too big of an issue anyway. I mean, I have underground power lines for my house and I'm on a well and there's no issues. And if they follow the farm stuff.
So the connection, what I would call after the gate area, where the up to the actual solar array.
I like the statement about the, checking on the feasibility of it, because point, there might be something that we can't quite make out on these prints or property lines and what can and cannot be done. But I think that for the benefit of that mobile home park and just to minimize that impact there, have that going around.
That works. Any other questions for Jim at this point?
There was, guarantees of if there's any well water issues, that the company will deal with that. I just wanted to um, find out if that's true. It came up, but I don't know where in the plan it was. Because there were concerns about well water and if anything happens.
They need to do a pre-test, test it first.
I mean, talking about blasting.
You're talking about blasting, or are you talking
It
about?
came
just,
up as one of the questions and concerns about the well water or wells. And that a
Portability?
lot of people have wells and
I remember that as well. They were concerned about any potential contaminants that may come from the water actually hitting the solar panels, running off, running over any of the equipment, any of the lines or anything else that they have in there. Is there any potential for contaminants to leach into the wells in that surrounding area?
I'd say that's a question for Mr. Stewart.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Well, I mean,
I just saw that grenade get lobbed.
Is Farmstead Lane, is that city water or wells? That's a new project there. They're way up on
I'm
the
pretty
hill.
sure that they're, I know they're sewer.
Yeah,
But
Farmstead is.
I don't believe they.
Them houses are way up-
I
way
don't
up
think they
the
have
hill.
water.
I don't know if they got.
No, I don't think they do, because they're way up those roads. I'm pretty sure they don't have water, so I think they're well.
Their wells.
I mean, I don't know how you make it a condition, because there's gonna be no way, unless you force them to sample every well in the neighborhood and do flow testing or something.
Put the pole in.
I don't know, and
Put the pole
and
Well,
the-
maybe,
the
you know,
speed at
it's-
which something that might wash off a panel will get in the ground and travel.
I think they were looking for recourse. They were concerned
Well,
about their
so-
wells and damage to their wells, and if they had recourse, if something like that happens.
Well, I think if there's a spill, and then you go through DEP
Right.
and.
So there's statutory remedies for someone who contaminates another person's groundwater and or well. And there's legal liabilities for the person or entities who cause that, and there's severe penalties associated with that. But as a zoning commission, your regulations don't allow you to sort of, unless it's volunteered by the applicant to sort of have the applicant issue lifetime guarantees to entities. I mean, it's the same standards that apply to subdivisions when the planning commission approves subdivisions and there's new wells being dug and excavation and driveways and utilities being installed. It's the same concept.
Yeah, I just thought that that it was mentioned that there are guarantees for that, and I couldn't find that. It came up and
My understanding of, and maybe I missed, I thought I was at every public hearing, I thought that they were talking about how the erosion control measures and met the ENS plan. The ENS plan did meet the deep standards, so you're gathering all the contaminants to that the guidelines, and I think that you certified for that, right, Jim? So, I'm not sure what else we could.
Right.
As a commission, I'm not sure what else we could do.
Okay.
That's,
And I don't believe that any excavation that would be done up there would affect wells.
right, because
There's
this all
no
came up
blasting.
because of the now the
Right.
possible underground. So it's a pole.
It's a pole.
I don't, if it's something that should be looked at, you can condition the applicant to, that it'll be a condition that they have to evaluate above ground versus underground for that section.
Well, that's actually something we already mentioned anyway.
Yeah.
Feasibility of it, and that would just simply bring all that under that umbrella.
Anything else for Jim?
No, they said, last time I was talking to the guy, he said, The fence is gonna be 130 feet back from the people's property lines. I just wanna make sure, because he's going with his ruler. I don't know.
Well, it depends which property we're
Yeah,
talking.
I know.
I mean, some properties are, 40 feet.
It's called out on the plan, on a couple of them, right, wasn't it?
Is it, or should be,
Yeah, I think the closest was 65 or something.
Oh, it was that. I've seen so many different overlays and maps.
I mean, it's maybe 165 from the house at Farmstead.
No, I didn't mean up by the trailer park. I meant by.
No, Farmstead Lane is not, that's not the trail.
No, yeah, Farmstead is
Where you asking?
where all the plantings are.
Yeah, we're Farmstead, because where the guy had all the lawyer there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's probably, I would say that's. Yeah, I mean, that's probably 160 feet
Yeah,
in directly there, from the corner of the house to. Probably a little closer to the property line.
you said from the property line to the fence.
Well, in the center of the
yeah,
property.
we,
I mean,
the solar panels are, this is from the minutes, this.
It's,
yeah, I mean, I would, 160 might be a little bit much, maybe 140.
So it says here,
140.
the minutes that Michelle, that we approved tonight says, the solar panels are 140 feet away from the neighboring property, and the fence is approximately 130 feet from the back residence at the closest point.
Okay, so that makes sense. Because the solar panels are a lot further from the property than the fence.
I never seen solar panels. Does contaminants come off them? I mean, it's all glass, isn't it? I mean,
As far as I know, it's all
I don't-
solid state, all glass and aluminum, so.
yeah, I don't see any contaminants coming off that. I don't know.
I think, and the cleaning, some people asked, was it planning? They talked about the cleaning of them, and they said it's just basically water that they squeegee off. They spray it with water and squeegee, if they do it.
if the rain cleans
The
it.
rain cleans over.
Yeah.
Other questions for Jim?
Decommission plan, I don't know. if you were- That was something planning said about having a decommission plan and a bond set before approval. Any approval of this.
You do have that authority set up on, so. I don't know if we've, you can also set that, you can also do that at a separate time. Such as we do with subdivision
Put a
sometimes.
bond for the decommissioning plan?
Sure.
They did
We're gonna hold
provide,
it we're gonna hold it for 25
I mean,
years.
that's the other problem is how long it's, I mean, 20, it's a long time, so.
the decommissioning plan though was a requirement of deep.
It is a requirement, but if it's gonna be held, then it's held. But it's gonna be a long time. It's not something that's gonna happen likely in 5 years.
But not just the money, but the whole plan of how it's decommissioned, the panels.
So is that deep or is that us?
We got one.
It was the
They
draft.
submitted
If
one.
they submitted a draft one that they would be submitting to deep.
So we make that a provision in here that, prior to full
Well-
implementation.
One of the things that Jim had mentioned is any of the deep application in his December, at the January 19th meeting, we hand out any of the stuff that is submitted to deep, any of the application will be submitted also to us. And in any potential motion, we have that written in there.
Well, my thought was that it was, planning was saying, do this before you approve it. So mean, I don't even know what it
It's,
reads.
it's a requirement of deep, but I don't,
And they have to go to deeds. So they-
Right, but it's also what planning asked zoning to do before
was-
we approve.
it was a recommendation, yes.
Yeah, they recommend. And I think once they get an approval, then they go to deep. They were there before deep, I believe now. They had to wait to get their wetlands letter and then they can start submitting to deep.
So we can't have it before deep does?
What I suggest there is let Deep do its analysis and have its experts determine what's the scope and extent of a decommissioning plan that meets its standards. And then again, that could be part of this. Be part of this process and could be part of it. We wouldn't know what that number would be because Deep has to do its analysis. We wouldn't know what the scope and nature, but they are the authority.
Right, I'm just wondering why it was a recommendation for us to do it before we approved. You know, I mean, it wasn't even talked about.
Planning.
Well, I believe there was a decommission. I remember a public hearing. It was a decommission. It was discussed. The decommission plan was discussed.
There was a draft,
And
yes.
and a draft drawing. was discussed.
So they did a draft plan based on planning's decommissioning or recommendation,
Did we get that?
yes. Because I remember it says draft all over.
I think a decommissioning approval of decommissioning plan by Deep in the scope and amount as determined by Deep is something you could provide.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
You could provide that in whatever motion you make, if that's something that's part of this, part of the.
But wouldn't that be covered under anything that they're providing to Deep as their application?
Well, it could be,
provided
but you
to us
still, the
also?
town, I might be mishearing this, but my sense is from Commissioner Rocco's and maybe. There wants to be some assurance that the decommission will take place whenever it's going to happen. It should be, I assume, some funds are set aside. to
But
ensure
wouldn't that
purpose.
be Deep that does that?
I'm not sure Deep is going to require them to hold money. I'm just not sure what Deep's requirements are, you know. So it would be. I
Are
think
we
it would be
requiring all the
sensible-
homeowners in town that have solar panels
Well,
on
no,
their
but
houses
that's the other side.
to
of
have
the
a
issue is to-
decommissioning plan?
Right, I mean, that's another, that's,
I don't know how many people in town have panels that they actually own. Decommissioning plan will come from the installers who won't control the lease. So when the time comes and your solar panels expire in 25 years, they come and take the material off and then they dispose them to their channel. So I don't think that there's really a apples to apples there.
But I
Well,
think
what
the same thing is potentially happening here. The
Oh,
property owners leasing this out to the panel people who are gonna put the panels on, and theoretically, I mean, you would think he's smart enough to say, you know, at the end, you have to get rid of these panels. So the problem is if they go out of business at some point,
But the same as for
Right?
house.
then
It's for a home.
they just sit there and never get removed.
Right.
And as I got panels on my roof, and mine says after whatever 25 years, you know, they'll remove them or they'll give them to me. I get to keep them.
Right, you get to
Right?
own it at that point, because it is, yeah, it's a lease.
So I guess the point is that it is important that we have a decommissioning plan, that we know about it, and that there will be money to back it, to have them removed, or to make sure that they're removed. I don't know how if there's an approval, that you do that without that, because it's done.
Could you require it prior to construction?
yeah,
of
you
the-
can say prior to the issuance of the permit, that they have to provide a bond in sufficient scope and amount as required by Deep. Because how would your commission know? How would we, Jim Stewart's our expert, how would he, I don't know if he would know that answer.
I mean, I might be able to hazard a guess today, but in 25 years,
That's the other problem.
you have no idea what it's gonna cost.
So I think it can be handled that way. If if you wanted to. I think that's, I don't suppose anything with the commission, but that's how, I think how you get to, I think that's how you get that protection. You get some measure, is it? Get some level of comfort, I would think.
So is the protection from deep enough or it's,
Well, I think that from the way I understand the process, deep is going to determine the scope and the nature of the decommission plan. That's my understanding. And there's a cost associated with that.
Right.
We know there's a cost. We just don't know what it is. And we don't know what they'll require. And even more with more difficulties, as Jim said, it's 20 years from now, or 25. So I would believe that deep would require some financial security. But the borough can, so we can sort of piggyback on that with our own condition.
Has the borough ever held a bond for the stuff that we have on our buildings?
There's no bond, there's
There's
no bond.
decommissioning, you know.
No, but let me, no, there are performance, there are other, as a result of some of the incidents, we have different levels of performance securities, but I believe they include removing.
But that would be up to the property owner with his
Right, Deep wasn't.
company that he's
involved.
leasing from to.
Right, Deep hasn't been involved in projects that the borough should be aware of.
Aren't they on the high school?
Yeah, they're on several buildings.
so do we let deep do it or do you want to add to it?
I think I'm not sure that this commission or through its staff has the expertise to be able to make that judgment. That's my concern as your counsel. Okay, that's my concern. Can we gather and garner some comfort that Deep is going to do a proper review and provide adequate assurance? I'm not sure who else would be in a more competent capacity than Deep to make that judgment.
So we could always go back and relook at it after deep makes that, correct?
Well, I think what we can say is that you talk about if you were to approve the plan as a condition, that one of the conditions is that the part of it, there is a plan that was submitted, I saw that is a decommission plan, so it's part of their approvals. But I think that the assurance is the financial assurance that you want, that not only will it be done, there's security to be done, but it's going to be done environmentally properly. And that usually results in corresponds to cost. Where's it going? What's it consist of? Where's it going? How much does it cost now versus that? I mean, going through all the trash stuff now.
So does DEP make that recommendation, or can we ask them to have, to make that recommendation of costs to decommission? Is that part of their, because you said that they will send us their findings, correct?
No, I said there, anything that the applicant submits to Deep, they have to provide to us.
Deep has to approve their decommission plan, correct?
Yes, I would assume they would. So
Do we get to, well,
we don't get a second bite at the apple, is what I'm saying.
do we at least get to see the approval or any contingencies? Because you said that the applicant will send it to us as well as DEP. Does DEP then notify us that in some way, or does the applicant notify us in some way that says, okay, I submitted my decom and it's been approved? Something along those lines? Or is it just simply we get to see the final draft and whether it's approved or not, we don't know?
I think we get to see anything that they've submitted to Deep. And we would ask them for any communication between them and Deep to provide to us. we've asked for, I think we've asked, as Jim put in his last review, that we asked for quarter or construction meetings, quarterly reports, things like that. So we could ask for those things in that, like what's going on with your DEP approval. Quite honestly, they're the experts more than any of us are.
You can just put it as part of your condition. You can add that any deep findings and any of these findings, analysis, and conclusions are provided to the borough. You know, these can all be post-decision matters. We, if you can remember, well, I'm not sure. You remember when the high school was built, we did the same thing with the water, with the brook. We carried testing on for at least 7 years. So we had a lot of follow-up. Some were quarterly, then they went yearly, then biannually, you know, so there's things you can still, you can bring this applicant, you know, you can set standards going forward, reporting requirements and analytical requirements.
One of the conditions we listed was the applicant shall attend a pre-application meeting with the DEEP regarding the proposed detention ponds and shall submit the DEEP required applications to Naugatuck Land Use Office to have on file. We can potentially reword that.
You can add that, including a decommission
the
plan,
decommissioning
and,
plan.
and also to
But we-
provide that all, any and all correspondence with DEEP shall be provided. to
The
land
applicant
use
shall
office.
submit to DEEP a generic permit registration for the discharge of stormwater and dewatering from construction activities required by DEEP. The required inspection report shall be submitted to the land use office. I mean, like you said, we're looking at something that's 20, 25 years out. I don't know how to put a
But
dollar
the
amount.
problem is let's think 25 years from now, and it has to happen. DEEP is not gonna keep a bond for everybody that they decommission. So the borough has to have assurance that 25 years from now, these things the panels are gonna be removed properly. So without money, without a bond, there's no assurance, you know, it could just be left.
I think
As,
then the
as they
borough
are
would-
on roofs on houses now, as they are on buildings that we have. As they, you know, and if somebody comes in for a more than 1 megawatt and goes before the siting council, we have no say.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part is that this is under 1 megawatt, right? Or
Right.
1 megawatt. Yeah, so.
Can't they have an insurance policy or something like that? Okay, so
Liability
they-
insurance, I'm sure there will be a liability policy that will cover any type of casualty. Or
Yeah, if they
There'll be
complain-
there'll be an environmental policy, so I'm sure there's gonna be a rider to that, once all these projects have those, or, you know, whoever's doing this is gonna have that. But the bond is a different issue, that's
Yeah.
a little bit different, and I think the best borough company we can get is to sort of piggyback on what DEEP does with this, because I don't know how this commission, especially, well, certainly tonight, we don't have evidence of what that would cost. I'm not sure, you know, I'm not sure DEEP's requirements are known yet.
I just wonder if any of that information is out there and we just didn't look at it. And that would be concerning.
And a good point, if this is a greater than 1 megawatt farm, we would have no say in it, so ultimately DEEP's decision would be what it stands, so I think the right path here would be to follow DEEP's recommendations here, because quite frankly, just 1.0001 megawatt, it wouldn't be under our jurisdiction anyway. So as long as the DEP finds it comforting and find their decom to be approved, then I would be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable. I mean, what I've read, it's really important. And again, we don't know how much it will be, but the fact that we could be left, you know, holding it up and yes, it may be a problem through the borough with other panels. Maybe we have to address that somehow. But with this application, we're talking 3,000 panels. So rather than the 20 or whatever on a house, we're talking 3,000 panels on this, and
But if
That's-
this
that's
is
a lot to do.
private lot, wouldn't it
Correct.
be of value for him to have something in place anyways? Because what does he do in 25 years if they don't come and take their panels? Now he's got a piece of property. What's he gonna do with it?
Problem is, nobody knows, you know.
Exactly. So nobody knows what he would do. It would be worthless to him. He would have to have something for himself. Because it's his property. If he wanted to sell it, would he even sell it 3,000 panels that are worthless? What's the value? He would make sure something's in place for himself to get
Well,
rid of
we
it.
can't say that. I mean, we can't know that, you know, what
No,
an applicant's gonna do 25 years. I mean, if we can't even figure out how much it is to decommission panels, we can't.
Neil, you all right with Deep doing it?
Yes,
Tommy?
yes, that's
Yeah.
beyond our guess.
What happens if somebody's, saying their well is contaminated or something? The borough gotta get involved in
No.
that?
It's not a borough responsibility. This is private property. It's a private development.
So it's.
The liability extends to the developer, the applicant, the owner who developed the property, anybody, who contractor. That's where the liability would go for that.
So I want to kind of go, in your packet, you have a list here of what attorney Green brought up. I kind of want to open it up for discussion here. So if you grab,
Starts with section 33.5.
33.5, general conditions. So as he was presenting, these were the points that he was trying to bring out. And I want to make sure everybody addresses and feels comfortable with, you know, what he brought up and what we've been said. So the 33.5.1, it says the size and intensity of proposed use and the size of the property on which it is located. So, you know, is the amount of the solar panels on the property too intense? You know, the lot coverage, in our zoning rec states that the size would be no more than 50% coverage. It came in at 13% coverage. So it complies with our regs. I'm not sure what intense means here because the panels are 8 to 9 feet high. And I believe the area on the 5 acres in the lot, the area where the panels are going to go is 5 acres and the lot's 12 acres. So they're really, they're only using half here. So I mean, do you guys feel that that's an intense purpose of use or do you, what do you think? Neil,
I think it's fine.
Eileen?
Too intense for that property. In that area.
Okay. 33.5.2 says the effect of the development on the plan of conservation and development, POCD. This one and 33.7.3, the POCD. The site plan shall be in conformance with the purpose and intent of any POCD adopted by the planning commission for the area in which the use is to be located. So the planning commission approved it.
Well, they sent a positive referral.
They sent a positive referral. Okay, all right. What do you guys think here?
I don't even know what they're trying to ask you here. The effective development on a plan of conservation development, that the POCD covers solar panel fields. I think this guy's
No.
just throwing stuff out there and hoping it sticks.
No, well, these are zoning regulations here.
Yeah,
These sections are zoning regulations, and the plan of conservation development, which is created by the planning commission, lays out how the town should basically
He laid up.
be laid out.
the planning, that's why you send your applications to the planning commission to see if they agree with it, they send a positive referral.
We need solar. The world needs solar. That's all I'm saying. Which one to go?
All right, so this came up a lot, property value, so 33.5.4.
I'm sorry, we just take a half a step back.
Okay, go
One of the things that was noted here, and I think it's important to Eileen's point, is that part of planning commission's referral, a positive referral, is that they have a recommendation is to not approve this application until they receive and accept the pre-commission plan. So that's actually falls in line with what Eileen was saying as well. So I want to make sure that, you know, that's in everybody's mind as well, as part of our discussion, that's all.
Yeah.
So.
So you're, Mr. Chairman, just one point on the PLCD. That is the recommended plan of development, Mr. Carr stated, for the entire town. And it recommends developments of properties in certain ways. And this is an R30 zone. This
Yes.
property. It is deemed to be, this use is deemed to be especially permitted use, which is why these standards, these are general standards, and you, the law requires that you consider all these things, which I appreciate. And this is something the commission does, basis pretty much, but it's important that you consider them. And then determine, you have discretion though whether or not you're satisfied with how that the application meets these requirements. So you have, this commission has broad discretion, and the courts, you know what, the courts very much give you broad discretion because they appreciate that commissioners come here and do this voluntarily. No one's getting a, you know, big paycheck at the end of all the hours that you guys have all put in here. So, and the courts really do appreciate so people have their hands on applications and consider all these things. So your plan of conservation development, I believe, is calls for this as an R30 zone. There are single family uses, there are other rural uses, correct, that are outlined. Farming uses, and there's questions about how this is characterized, because this is a different use than the plan of conservation development was developed before solar farms, so to speak, were at least in this area.
Right, how do you compare harvesting wheat compared to harvesting sun?
You know, that's why you get paid the big money, you guys. It really, if you think about it, it really is academically intriguing. It is, because these are things that nobody thought about, probably even 15 years ago. So, you know, so how you feel that the plan of conservation development, and how this proposal is sort of
But the planning
back on
commission
that.
did give it a positive referral.
Well, the planning commission is sort of your guide, because they adopt the plan of conservation development, they develop it. But they did give a positive referral based on their analysis of how they read the plan of conservation development. But you still, in your general principles here and guidelines, have to make that determination. How you feel.
All right, so getting back to 33.5.4, where they were talking about the effect on property values. So the effect upon property values and appearance in the neighborhood, taking into account topography of the lot and the character, location, and height of the building and structures, and the site plan and landscaping. So this one and 33.7.2, which the neighborhood, the site plan shall be of a character as to harmonize with the neighborhood to accomplish transition in character between areas of unlike character, to protect property values and to preserve and enhance the appearance and beauty of the community. So those two are connected. we had one expert talk about, the property values, and he gave his expert opinion that this will affect the values, but he didn't give any evidence to back it up. He also didn't do a direct impact study for the appraisal, and there was no direct evidence. I guess my question to you guys is do you think there's going to be a big effect on the property value when somebody puts a solar farm in this area?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Could go either way, could go up.
Eileen?
I think it's possible, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, if I thought about 3,000 solar panels next to me, I wouldn't be happy about that.
AJ?
No, I honestly don't have a clue.
Yeah.
There's a lot of effort being placed into to align with 33.7.2.
Yeah.
To try to make that transition between unlike characters. But how that will directly impact it, to your point, I didn't see anything presented that gave conclusive evidence that, there's a 5% reduction or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I don't understand it. If you can't see it.
Yeah.
What's it gonna hurt? That's the thing, you can't see it.
Yeah, I mean, you
I mean, it is uphill and it's better uphill than downhill.
right,
It's better to be level, but
yeah.
it is.
I mean, you had one neighbor against it, who obviously brought in the attorney.
Mhm.
And then you had the neighbor next door to him.
Yeah.
That's for it. Which was, who was that guy?
Mr. Esther.
Yeah, I mean, and then you had the petitions of the people at the abutters who had no problem with the project, people in the,
Trailer,
yeah, I mean, so,
trailer park.
yeah,
It's
I mean,
the
they
two-
will-
it's the two houses, right?
yeah, that's right. I mean,
Yeah.
with the site plan there,
I have to be in their backyard. They didn't give us a site walk for the backyard. To give a site walk for Bosco, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I look at what the guys are doing, they're willing to fence it in, they're willing to do landscape, and they move the border away from the property, they're trying to make it the character of the property. I mean, they're we're making the project better as we go. So, I mean, what's your take?
You just said it all.
All right.
Mm.
Anybody else want to add any comments, or Tommy, BJ, at this point? And then we talked about the drainage, which Jim covered. Does anybody, I think, does anybody else have any other questions with Jim? And I think 33.8 kind of helps us, the board, put our conditions on here. The requirement of screening of the property from adjoining premise fences, plantings, or other devices as specified by the zoning commission. So we are trying to make it better.
Or you're trying to make it less intrusive.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah. I mean, I think we've addressed a lot of the concerns. I mean,
Is that by virtue of the site plan, with the amendments to the site plan, is that, the concerns were addressed through the drawings?
Yeah, I think they came back with drawings several times and they made adjustments to drawings to their site plan based upon the comments at the public hearing, during the public hearing.
And the original layout was completely different.
Yeah.
It's much more spread out and lower to the fence line. They actually had areas that were open closer to the top, and that's all been condensed to try to keep the solar farm, the actual panels much more compressed within the center of it to give them as much open area perimeter, thank you, around the edge.
So I mean, I think we've addressed a lot of concerns, now it's up to the commission to decide whether or not, solar farm facility belongs here. I mean, do we have any other questions, or concerns from anyone at this point?
No, sir.
All right, then I'm,
So I did write up a motion. I had met with Lori, I met with Jim, talked with Ned. Obviously, it's a long motion. If you did want to put something in about the draft, the decommissioning plan, we could probably add it to one of these that maybe on the applicant shall submit to DEEP a general permit registration for the discharge of stormwater and dewatering from construction activities as required by DEEP. The required inspection reports shall be submitted to the land use office. Can we put a line in there that says any decommissioning final plan submitted to DEEP and approved by DEEP shall be provided to the
Yeah,
borough?
that should be a
monitor?
separate,
So make it a
I
separate,
make that a separate item.
okay.
Wherever you are, just add that.
So we'll put it down, if we put it as number 10,
Sure.
I think you might have one in front of you, but
Actually, I don't have the comments. Oh, yeah, I would add it, a separate.
so we're number 10, maybe.
So is there any, and I don't know the legalities of it, but is there any way to do a provisional approval, I'll say, because if there's if the DEP comes back and says, listen, this decom plan is no go, and they've already started construction, and they have to make changes to the decom plan, or does the decom plan have to be completely approved before DEP will allow the ground to break?
I'm not sure where DEEP is in that process. I don't know where they are, but let me say this to you, to answer your first question.
Yeah.
We can't do provisional approvals.
Okay.
Good question. The way a commission may keep or say, or to keep its hands on something after it approves it, is to require subsequent submissions, and such as we talked about, and Eileen brought up about, not just requiring submissions to DEEP, but also we want to see what DEEP's responses are. And in addition, that the applicant will supply DEEP and or the borough an appropriate decommissioning bond in the scope and amount is determined by DEEP. We add that as part of our point of view conditions, and I think that's the best as a commission that we can do.
Is there any way to put notations in there that, prior to groundbreaking, there is an approved decommission plan?
One of the things you can do is that you can require that. Although you have to be careful, because if DEEP won't issue something, then you can't give an approval subject to a condition that an applicant can't reasonably obtain. There's a specific case right on
What
that
if DEEP
point.
doesn't require a bond?
Then
we don't
we,
get one, or?
yeah, well, that's the other thing. If they have issued some type of regulation that says that there is no a bond on solar, there's a lot going on with the exemptions for solar construction, the taxation, the whole thing is in the mix right now. And so if DEEP may decide that you can't, but I don't see a reason why the borough we can't add on to this and say that it'll be either if we require it or in the scope and amount as required by DEEP or the borough. And
Well,
if
that's
DEEP,
my point. is that
Well, I
if
mean-
they say, hey, we don't do that, we're not gonna give you, and we say, give us an amount, what do
Right.
you think? We don't do that.
Well, you keep yelling at me when I send things back to you, so I didn't want to put this on your plate.
Well-
This is.
I just can see
not an
them
easy
saying, they don't do anything extra deep. They do only what they're supposed to.
But I think that's how you handle it. I think that's how, that's how I think this commission in a legal way can handle that, along with, giving us some assurance that this will be decommissioned properly. And
So and just because, I apologize for the comment. Just so I understand, so we can add as amendment or
as a
as
condition.
a condition, I'm sorry, to this, that the Borough of Naugatuck requires a DEP approved decommission plan prior to breaking ground to install. Is that a correct statement or not?
You can provide or not, sort of. You can say that's a condition that it has to be approved prior to construction. Done that before. with other permits.
Right, the deep, they won't be able to start, well, they won't be able to start construction without a deep approval.
I just want to make sure that goes to Eileen's point, if for anything goes wrong with the decom, if something's delayed, Deep looks at it and says, hey, this is not going to work for us. And he starts breaking ground already.
But he can't break ground without Deep's approval,
And that would include the,
the decommissioning plan.
So just put it in motion. So we pick, again, we're back to where we were.
So
Let's piggyback what Deep does.
I wrote here, the Deep approved decommission plan shall be submitted to the Naugatuck Land Use Office
Prior to construction.
to construction.
I'm good with that.
One other thing, what if
That one.
DEP says you should ask for a bond?
So what we do is you say together with, you can add that, together with a bond in the scope and amount as determined by Deep or Borough of Naugatuck.
Together with,
A decommissioning bond
scope and
in the scope and amount as determined by Deep or the Borough of Naugatuck.
prior to construction, together with the scope and amount.
That makes sense to.
So the Deep approved decommission plan shall be submitted to the Naugatuck Land Use Office prior to construction, together with the scope and amount of decommissioning bond as recommended by the Deep.
Or the borough. As determined by Deep,
As determined
by
and as
Deep
recommended
or the
by the-
borough. Bond amount. If there's clerical corrections to that, we can make those.
So I can just state it when you say it.
And
When it comes to number 10, I could just read it. for you,
Okay, yeah, that's,
Since I wrote it.
And I'm wondering about a couple of other conditions. Question on this, the vegetation, I had asked about the vegetation being maintained under the panels and around. And I know there's a plan, they said in their plan that they're going to do that. I don't know if it's too redundant to make it as a condition, but I just want to make sure they're doing it.
The
So,
mowing of the field.
Huh?
The mowing of the field, basically.
not the mowing of the vegetation. He was saying that there's gonna be vegetation, meadow-like plants all around, under the panels and around.
She just wants to make sure that they actually do that and it's not left barren or allowed for
Well,
weeds.
it's gotta be planted or else it doesn't meet the sediment erosion control guidelines. It has to be seeded.
But it's won't.
And he put notes on the drawing. It said topsoil and seed.
Right.
So, and they have to mow it, they have to maintain it, or else it's gonna start to grow trees up and block their panels, so they have to maintain it. You know, regularly, annually sort of thing, or they're gonna end up with something they can't even maintain.
All right, well, I know they said that in the plan that they're going to do that, but I just,
They had a maintenance schedule.
okay, all right, then let that go and just expect, I mean, is somebody gonna be, are you gonna be monitoring it?
No. Well, I mean, I don't know what I would monitor,
So-
other
Well,
than
there's
they
progress,
I
said,
mean-
there's quarterly progress reports. I
but
see.
that the quarterly progress reports were based upon the construction period.
Right.
So we may not know if it's being maintained.
Well,
Right,
like
so
Jim
there's
said,
no
if it's not,
checking
then
or
it
anything?
wouldn't
If
work.
it's growing over their panels,
It wouldn't.
then it wouldn't work for them. The
No, no, no,
panels
no,
wouldn't
no,
work.
no, I mean, they were saying that there's gonna be vegetate, there's meadow-like flowers and stuff that will be under the panels. There won't be grass or
Well,
growth.
we would make sure
coming
that,
up.
we'd make sure that when it's completed, that there's grass and green underneath there, absolutely, because that's part of the sediment erosion control requirements.
You mean grass or bushes?
He talked about meadow plants, like meadow flowers, and I think he showed us at one point about flowers and not grass.
Well, I think they're just saying it's a natural growth, that they estimate that it's kind of like a wildflower that might grow, but they would go in there probably 3 times a year and mow it down. So it's
Right.
not overgrowing
Right,
their panels.
right, and then the concern was if there's no growth under the panels, we could have a soil and erosion issue with water coming down, so. They have a plan, I just wanted a condition to make sure that they're following the plan, but if nobody's gonna check, then,
Well, we're gonna check initially,
right,
you know, we're
Right.
gonna go up there every year for the next 20 years and walk the thing.
With our cane.
I don't think that's.
no,
that's
I'm
our
not
plan. But I
saying
mean,
that, I
we
just,
certainly, in the bond we're proposing, is gonna include that
oh, okay,
work. He's gotta get it stabilized. I mean, that's part of the stabilizing process. Now, you're gonna get bare patches over the 20 years, you know, maybe, but
it was just, the concerns about soil and erosion issues, if those things aren't maintained.
Yep.
And if we don't have eyes on it, which we won't, and I understand why we won't, that could be a big mess. All right, and the underground power lines, the feasibility, if the applicant can
Right.
assess the feasibility of underground power lines.
You were gonna give a measurement, or there was some determination of
But they're
point to
really,
point, it was.
The pole from the gate area up to the actual,
Well,
Yeah.
it should be, you should provide that that's where,
Yeah,
that's what the commissioner
okay.
has in mind.
so just as the guy who's probably gonna have to determine what that means, I mean. So they find it, I mean, you have to say they have to do it, right?
no, feasibility,
Well, it's feasible, okay, it's feasible, I'm not doing it though.
No, it's a condition of you can say underground.
So they're gonna do it if
but
it's feasible.
But if feasible, I mean, in other words, you can't, I assume you're not gonna you're gonna require somebody to put underground piping in if it's gonna destroy the possibility, or there's a small chance even it will destroy 5
Well,
wells or something.
would we
like
do
that,
it
right?
as
Nobody would do
a
that.
recommendation, because these are recommendations, that they do underground wiring or underground wiring from,
For a project like this, I think it makes sense to state a preference and, because it'll show you, it'll let the applicant know that it's what the town wants. I mean, how do you require it? What's the standard?
well, what
We're already
determines
dealing
it's
with a
feasible?
lot of,
Yeah.
with a lot of concern about the look and the presence of this entity. And whatever we can do from the bushes to the changing the color, it's noted here, it must be a black fence, to try to minimize the impact it has on the surrounding area. I think it's, I really believe that it lends.
So I'm just
that
trying to figure out how to
same
word it.
That the applicant shall investigate the feasibility of underground power lines.
Yeah, and install.
And install.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have install it.
Install underground power lines from A to B if found feasible.
And frankly, honestly, if it comes back that the feasibility isn't there, then they gotta come back and seek your permission to change it. I mean, unless you don't want that, you rather have them make a choice in the field that's determined by the borough engineer. I mean,
So I'm gonna put from the, what you might call their box at the top, their power.
Right.
From their grid box. From, what do you call where all the solar it's going to? It's going into that power supply.
power station.
Okay, from the power station.
Now, we call that, they won't be upset, we call that power station.
From the power station to the
You get
pole located near
you.
the gate.
That's the first pole right after the power station.
It might be, yeah.
It's equipment. Utility equipment. Pad.
Power station.
Area from.
We just said there's just gonna be 2 new poles, right? So.
Well, they're
feasibility-
showing 2, but. you know,
They
it's a long
have to go,
distance.
they have to go before
It's a long
Eversource is gonna tell them. what they got. So power lines from the utility station, utility power station.
I would just call you utility equipment area. And that's what they're calling it on the plan, so.
Read my writing.
It's all on tape.
Utility equipment area to the gate at the bottom of the hill.
To the pole located near the gate. To the new pole located near the, proposed near the gate. Okay. We don't need laptops to adjust this.
So that'd be 10 and 11.
And 12, we talked about addressing more trees and vegetation in those areas.
We talked about adding more, we did talk about the height, how long it would take to grow, and then you brought up the concern someone raised about how thin the base might be at the start of it, because they grow taller,
Right.
faster than out. Kind of like me. But I don't think we actually addressed the putting,
Adding more.
adding more. So I, at least not tomorrow, I think, you know.
Deal. What's your take? Let it grow.
Adding more trees, you have to be on site.
Are the trees at the base of the, before the slope?
Pardon me?
Are the trees on the base?
No, I think this is by the Orem's house, correct? You're
Yeah.
Referring to.
So by their house, but then the hill goes up, right?
Yeah.
So if the bottom of the trees are bare, they're seeing through to the bottom of the slope, right?
That's a good
They're
point.
not seeing. Oh,
That's actually a really good point, and directly behind those trees, there, as part of the plan, there's additional plantings planned. Oh, it's a lot of these. There are additional plantings planned directly behind the trees, and they opened up that area for that purpose, and to your point, you're not gonna go, in the base, you won't see anything.
the base, you won't. The height is what's gonna block the panels under.
No, it was just, it was brought up at the meeting. It needed more.
Yeah.
So I make a motion to approve the special permit application for a 1 megawatt or less solar farm array for the property located at 0 Bosco Drive, account number 016-9188, applicant Tritech Americas LLC, with the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall submit to the DEP a general permit registration for the discharge of stormwater and dewatering from construction activities as required by DEP. Required inspection reports shall be submitted to the land use office. Number 2, the applicant shall attend a pre-application meeting with DEP regarding the proposed detention ponds and shall submit the DEP required applications to the Naugatuck Land Use Office to have on file. Number 3, the applicant shall place a signature box as depicted in section 36.3 of the Naugatuck zoning regulations for certification by the borough engineer as required by section 32-32.4 of the said zoning regulations on the sediment and erosion control plan. Number 4, the applicant shall provide the borough of Naugatuck a sediment and erosion control and landscaping bond as approved by the acting town engineer and the borough of Naugatuck zoning commission. Number 5, the applicant, contractor, and engineer shall attend a pre-construction meeting with the borough land use and engineering staff prior to the start of any construction for the project. Number 6, the applicant shall submit quarterly project progress reports to the borough land use office until the project has been deemed completed by the Naugatuck land use office staff. Number 7, the galvanized fencing surrounding the property shall be black in color as to blend in with the landscaping of the project. Number 8, the final as-built plan must be submitted to the Naugatuck land use for review, acceptance, and closure of the construction process. Number 9, special permit approval form must be recorded on the land records in the Naugatuck Town Clerk's office within 90 days of the zoning commission approval vote.
Number 10, the DEP approved decommission plan shall be submitted to the Naugatuck Land Use Office prior to construction, together with the scope and amount of the decommission bond determined by the DEP or the Borough of Naugatuck. Number 11, applicant shall investigate the feasibility of underground power lines from the utility equipment area to the gate, to the new pole located near the gate.
And install. If found feasible.
And install if found feasible.
You want to read that one more time, just in its entirety?
Applicant shall investigate the feasibility of underground power lines from the utility equipment area to the new pole located near the gate and install if found feasible. And I would suggest a roll call vote.
Okay.
Just ask.
Deal?
Approve.
Well, wait, there should be a second.
Oh,
Or
first.
first and then a second.
Yeah. Do I have a first?
First.
Second?
Second.
Yeah.
All right, Neil,
Approve.
Eileen,
As I said, the intensity is too much, no.
AJ,
Approved.
Tommy,
Yeah.
I approve it. Motion is passed.
Okay, good work.
That was Ned.
All right, I assume you don't need me anymore, right? You guys are good?
Now you have somewhere else to go.
I do, but thank you all. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
So this.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Neil, that's just the first night.
Yeah,
You wanna take
out
a-
here, 15 minutes. That's it. 15 minutes. Oh.
All right, so let's just keep on going. Livestock. Poultry regulations.
I think you did a good job. of it. Could understand.
Do you have any questions on it?
Not yet.
Everybody have a chance to review it?
God. What the fuck? Sorry.
That's, yeah. You-
Sorry. I almost, somebody just pulled in front of me, like it never like, oh my God. I probably said it differently, but I didn't mean it that way. Holy cow. Holy cow.
He's muted.
Okay,
He's muted.
okay, so. what we got?
Wow, that was great.
That's in the annals for posterity.
I want a copy of that.
Hey, all right. So I owe an explanation. Somebody just pulled right in front of me and I was in shock. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I was a little in shock, so I'm all good. Holy cow. Holy cow. Have a good night, everybody. Wow. Wow.
It's mine.
Oh, you're welcome. Good luck with everything.
Good luck.
Oh, yeah. No, no.
But for you, yes.
This is a
Well,
good.
This is how we welcome new folks.
Anyway,
right,
let's
go
go
ahead.
ahead. This.
Poultry.
Yeah. So should we read it in? So we know exactly what we're
Absolutely.
Yeah.
addressing?
It's been modified so many.
Okay. So it should state at the top, section 25.13, because that's what we renumbered it based on what we have. Accessory use regulation for backyard poultry. Purpose, the following regulation will govern the keeping of backyard poultry and is designed to prevent nuisances and conditions that are unsanitary or unsafe. For the purposes of this regulation, backyard poultry is defined as chickens, hens, ducks, or rabbits as a non-commercial accessory on a single-family property of a half acre or larger. Backyard poultry are not allowed on multifamily or mixed-use properties. Failure to meet the standards listed below will result in enforcement action against the owner occupant of the property by the zoning enforcement officer or any other enforcement official representing the borough of Naugatuck or the state of Connecticut. Standards: A, lot size. Single-family residential property must be a half acre, 21,780 square feet or larger to house backyard poultry. B, number: no more than 5 chickens shall be allowed for each single-family half-acre dwelling. For an additional quarter acre, 10,890 square feet, 2 more chickens will be allowed. Farms as designated in the Nordic land use regulations shall have no limit on the number of backyard poultry that may be kept on property. C, roosters. Roosters are not permitted. It is the responsibility of the owner to lawfully dispose of any rooster once identified. D, enclosure. Backyard poultry shall be provided with a covered, predator-proofed fenced coop that is at least 6 feet in height, well ventilated, and designed to easily accessed for cleaning. The coop shall allow at least 2 square feet per chicken. Chickens shall have access to an outdoor enclosure that is fenced to contain the backyard poultry on the property and to prevent predators from access. Food products shall be securely contained to prevent the presence of pests and predators and offensive odors. E, setbacks. Coops housing backyard poultry shall be located in the rear yard only and at least 20 feet from the side and rear property boundary lines. F, sanitation. The coop outdoor enclosure, the storage and the management of waste must be kept in a sanitary condition and free from offensive odors in accordance with the Nordic Valley Health District and animal control regulations. The coop and outdoor enclosure must be cleaned on a regular basis to prevent the accumulation of waste. G, drainage. Proper drainage shall be required to avoid collection of water. Water shall be diverted from backyard poultry areas and shall not pollute surface or subsurface water supplies and shall not be directed to neighboring properties. H, not permitted. Backyard poultry may not be kept inside any structure used for residential purposes. Free-range poultry is prohibited. Enclosures are not permitted directly over land containing an on-site septic system. Structures and enclosures such as fenced areas shall not be permitted over wells. Slaughtering, there should be no outdoor slaughtering of chickens. That was I. J, permit. Permits will not be required, but all owners of backyard poultry shall submit a written statement to the zoning enforcement officer certifying compliance to these regulations. K, ZEO approval. Prior to establishing an enclosure, ZEO approval will be required for properties that abut rear lot properties.
Along with this, we also will correct the regulations where it says 3 acres or more. We will take out the ones that say chicken, we'll leave the farm, but we will go through the regulations and
Okay.
update that portion of it. And this is going to be under accessory uses. So that's what section 25 is. Accessory uses for residential properties.
Any questions? Pretty good.
No, sir, yeah, that says it all.
All right, so
The
then,
only question I had was we did have a limitation on F. On the last one, I believe they said no more than 1 cubic yard of waste is permitted on the property, and then I don't know if we care about that or not. I mean, it was one of the notes I had. If we can leave it the way it is, because this is actually worded very well, nicely done on the whole write-up.
Well, we took out, because originally I had 2 cubic yards or whatever, and then Jim said that's an awful lot, Jim has chickens. So we took out the cubic
Okay.
yards of waste. Do you think it needs to be in there?
How much waste you can have?
Would you put that in the
And again, there are
regulation?
people that will use it for composting or use it as manure in their gardens if they have a garden too. I hate to be in a situation where they're putting it somewhere else.
I mean, I've had chickens for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. And I empty the coop and I end up with a wheelbarrow load and I take it over and I spread it out in a hole somewhere and that's the end of it. I can't imagine piling it up, but someone might, I guess. But
That would
if it's
then-
a health issue, then you call the health department.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
all right, I'll make a motion to create section 25.13 accessory use for backyard poultry and approve the draft text change as presented at the February 16th, 2022 zoning commission meeting for the accessory use of backyard poultry for a residential property of at least 1/2 acre in size, in the borough of Naugatuck, with an effective date of March 7th, 2022, applicant Borough of Naugatuck. Right first,
Yeah, okay.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Just a couple little tidbits of information that I did gather. Since we had closed the public hearing, but I'll just bring it up now. There are 7,256 single-family residential properties in the borough of Naugatuck.
How much again?
7,256.
Single family, is that an apartment? Like
No,
kind of
single-family residential
building?
houses, like your house.
Okay,
3 acres of land or more, there's 73 properties. Yes, 1/10%.
73 properties.
In the borough of Naugatuck
And there's
have
no
3
there's no
acres of
structure
land.
on them?
No,
Oh,
73 properties on the borough of Naugatuck that are residential property have 3 acres of land, only 73. That's 1/10%. That's all we were allowed to have. Of a half
You said
acre.
no, with no houses. on it.
No, without.
No, with
Without-
houses.
with the
Yes.
residential houses.
Yes,
With houses.
that's when I got this from Fred Agee in our GIS, and I have maps and it shows it, he color coded, just so you see. Half acres or larger, 1,720 properties, which represents about 24%. And if you're really interested, here's each of your houses. That shows 20 foot off your back property line and rear property lines, or side property lines, to show where you can have chickens. Some of you can, for instance, Tommy has an acre of land. He has a very tight area where he can put them because of this yard slope. So I did all of the current commissioners, unfortunately, not Jersey anymore.
Don't worry about
it. But if you didn't want to see it, it's marked out,
Right.
and you can see, I marked out where 20 feet off your line is, just for your own information. Neil and Ricky do not have a half acre, so they would not be able to do it. AJ, interesting on your property.
Big
What does that
brother's
mean?
watch.
My property is, I've got 1.16, 1.2, something like that acres, but the way my house is set up, my driveway's over 590 feet to the road, that's all my property, I'm half the driveway, and then all the way around me. Wow, all the way around. It's, the only place I have is directly, like, if you're coming down my driveway, my right side neighbor, that's it.
What
On
street
the
you
other
live
side of
on?
him, Guntown Park, so they're really.
Oh,
There's a big piece of land that's cleared behind him that's actually below Norton property that I
And then
think,
he's got wetlands all around.
yeah, so it's,
It's right in front of me.
so what you make you think you'll have a lot, you really don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just something I wanted to say.
That's my short.
Okay, the mayor will be coming in shortly to speak,
Oh, there it is.
better bring some coffee.
and that's going to be our,
Wow, what a distinguished group. Dirty Dozen. I'm gonna spread something out that's pretty big.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Andreas, you've seen the show before.
Yeah.
All right, so what I want to do is give everyone an overview of a whole bunch of things that are going on all at once. And we're leading up to a process where we are going to start changing the zone downtown into an overlay zone where we're going to create the rules. And when we create the rules, there's going to be a lot of people involved, including people from this commission, you know, to work on the new rules. And then ultimately, it's going to come back here for this commission to implement a new overlay zone. But with that, you know, that's sort of the reason I'm here. But before we can even think about it, you should know some of the things that are going on. And I'm gonna condense it as best I can because there's a lot going on. But when you look at the whole downtown area and the revitalization project, it all started at this end in the north with parcel D, which is the train station, which is now, we sold it, the town sold it, and it's now the station restaurant. and it's also the location of the train platform where it currently sits. So the entire project of what we're talking about now, we've delayed it until now because now we have real legitimate two-way train traffic, 22 trains a day, sidings, which changes very favorably our demographics. So now that we have, for the first time ever, a real commuter line, we're going ahead with a whole host of projects, one of which is parcel B, which I'm going to talk about. I'm skipping over parcel C. We all know about parcel C. It's right there, St. Mary's Hospital. That was the second part of the project. But right now, we are commencing parcel B, which is going to be a transit-oriented development project. So what that means is it's a project based on people who use public transportation. So the public transportation in this case is the train, but there will also be buses and other things there. So we have an RFP, a request for proposals. There's a lot of interest from people who want to develop that site. So what we're doing is we've asked for, plans, a concept, a vision. And the town, including representatives from this commission, we're going to decide what we like the best as a town. Do we want to have 6 stories? Do we want to have less? Do we want commercial, residential? We're going to pick out a project. When we pick out a project, we're then going to define the rules for what we want. Now, we could sit here for 16 meetings in a row and come up with a set of rules, but they're most likely not going to match exactly what we want. So we're doing it in a more logical way, where we're going to pick out what we want, and then we're going to define the rules to meet it. So right now, this is out with the RFP. We're going to have the responses in late April. Sometime in late April, we're going to start a committee to decide what we want. After we decide what we want, there's going to be, we're going to write the rules to match it. So there's going to be a lot of work, a lot of homework, and a lot of people involved. And ultimately, it's going to come here for what the rules should be, A, and then B, of course, all the projects will come here, during the normal building process. So parcel B is the main focus of what we're going to work on next. We're also going to be working on parcel A, which is the event center, the 380,000 square foot building. That's going to be a separate project, but it's not far off into the future. The state will be giving us parcels Y and Z. So A, Y, and Z are going to be an additional project, which is not far off in the future. We're also building ball fields now to replace Greenfield North and South. So Greenfield North and South and the Greenway from the Whittemore Bridge down to the ball fields will be an additional project, which is maybe after the other two, but not that far off into the future. We're also starting now our Rubber Avenue project, and all of the town properties on Rubber Avenue, which will be turned over, put on the grant list and become taxable. We've got the Risden property. By the way, the funding is in place for this. We've got a lot of funding sources for all of the projects. Some are in place. Some will be working on with infrastructure money. We're going to have money from the developers and money from the people who buy the sites. There's some collateral issues that we'll all be working on. Additional downtown parking being one of them, and the borough board is working on that now. Also, we have a separate project, which is an infrastructure project, which is already underway, where the water that basically comes from the west side of Naugatuck down to the river with pipes that go back to the 1880s is being redone, so we'll be ready to accommodate the future development. And it's basically sort of comes downtown like this, and it all has to be improved, or some of the pipes completely replaced. All of the streets are going to become complete streets. Now, I know most of you know what a complete street is, but for the newer members, a complete street is a nicer street. So I'm not trying to be funny, it's just. So here's an example. So right now, this is what the intersection of Rubber Avenue and Meadow Street looks like. So a complete street looks like this. So it's got new pavement, fancy sidewalks, crosswalks, trees, landscaping, no wires, so bike paths, things like that. So in our infrastructure project, Maple Street and Church Street, in addition to the pipes, will be becoming complete streets. When we do the Parcel B project, Water Street, you probably remember this, but Water Street used to come all the way down to Rubber Avenue and up, remember?
Yeah.
So Water Street will be coming back, and the state is going to be building Water Street, the train platforms, and the new train station right here with state money. So it's going to set the stage for, you know, a beautiful downtown project. And all of these things are happening simultaneously. So give you an example, you know, like in the mayor's office, we get a lot of calls from people who are upset about Church Street, Rubber Avenue, people driving the wrong way. So part of the design is to limit the width of Church Street. Right now, it's 38 feet wide. It's going to be reduced down to 16 feet and made to look, you know, a lot nicer. So the reason I'm here tonight is just sort of a preview to let you know that there's a lot going on. It's going to start to happen real fast. They're all going to be playing a key part in it, in the selection process, in the new rules, and in approving the projects once they're designed. And I just want to give you an overview and answer any questions you might have. And of course, all along the way, you'll have guidance from staff, attorneys, consultants, everything else.
Just the whole town?
No, this is just the project. This is not the whole town.
Are we talking with the utility companies? Because like with regards to before we do this, I mean, I can't wait, that looks gorgeous. But with the power lines and things like that, there was a recent redone on Rubber Avenue where we have very similar sidewalks like this, and then within a month, somebody cut it up. And now the concrete's, you know, all messed up.
So it's not supposed to happen that way. I will say that in every case, I'll even say it right to the camera, the mistakes are made by the state of Connecticut, not by the Naugatuck Street Department. If they change their mind frequently and make things more difficult than they have to be. But to answer your question, yes. So right now, the utility work is being done in many areas, And it's part of the project, and it's an early part of the project because you gotta do that before you dig it up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Make it look all pretty. and
so the answer is
Run it.
yes, the utility companies are involved in all of the projects.
And then the other question is, what's the timeframe you're looking at for some of these?
So we're gonna start building this in June of next year. And we would plan to start building this next year. Depending on the responses we get in April of this year, we're gonna decide when to start this project and this project. This project is, I'm gonna say, 3 years out, 1 year out, 2 years out, so I'll say from 1 to 4 years for everything you see here. Now, don't also forget, we've got our whole industrial park project down here. I didn't even mention that, but that's also gonna happen in the same time period.
And then the other question I had is I heard that in this area, there's gonna be a tractor trailer school of some sort going in. Is there any considerations on this road for that stuff?
Well, there's 2 trucks, so I think
Just
we
2
can
trucks,
handle
okay.
2 trucks, but it's right there. If we can't handle 2 trucks, we shouldn't be here.
I wasn't sure how many trucks they were gonna have, so.
So they're teaching people how to drive trucks.
Yeah.
So basically, all you do is teach people how to back up into parking spots, and then when they go out on the road, they'll drive on Route 8, or, whatever, but it's 1 acre right there that, where people can learn how to get a CDL license to drive trucks or other heavy equipment. Good paying jobs and really, really good
No,
jobs.
that's a really cool thing to have.
They were here today. Gotta have some more questions. Shanita, you were all fire when I met you, so.
I mean, I'm excited to see the growth and everything, and you've already known some of the ideas that I,
Yeah.
discussed with you some time ago. One of the questions was already asked, I mean, here the answer be 4 years, it's actually phenomenal. That's pretty fast to actually have it completed.
Yeah, so we could have started these projects some time ago,
Mhm.
but we didn't because the quality of the people who want to come here is different and much better when you have a real community. So, for example, like most people in Naugatuck, before, I'll say it, in my lifetime,
Mhm.
if you want to take the train to New York City, you drive to Fairfield or somewhere to get the train, because you can get there, but you can't get back. So now we're gonna have reliable two-way train traffic. So people can, and by the way, in 6 to 8 years, the trains are gonna be such that you can get on a train in Naugatuck and go straight to Grand Central Station. So they're gonna be futuristic trains. But in the interim, we're gonna use the trains we have, but there's gonna be frequent, reliable service. So you could live in Naugatuck and work in Bridgeport and Stamford and New York, anywhere along the line, or the reverse. So
Mhm.
people can work here and live down there and live here and work down there and go back and forth to work. And, TOD is based on, and this is national, it's not just Naugatuck. Everywhere in the country, transit-oriented development works because people who rely on public transportation don't need cars. Or if you have a husband and wife with 2 cars, you rely on 1 car. A lot of people have no cars and rely entirely on public transportation. So when that happens, people have more money to spend on restaurants and things like that. And it makes a more vibrant downtown area. So that's what we want. We want more activity, more vibrancy, and things like that, which creates a parking problem, which I call a good problem because that's what we want. But we're working on that. We've got a whole bunch of parking ideas and solutions, so there's going to be a lot of action here. So rest up and
When does that next phase kick in? After April?
yes, well, we're going to get the proposals at the end of April. So I would say your heavy lifting begins in May, and I would say for the next year plus, there's going to be a lot of activity.
Are you going to consider the four-way intersection by the tunnel as far as
Yeah, I mean,
redoing something?
The answer is, yeah, I want someone else to pay for it, but, I would like to see, so it's a good question. I mean, let me show you what I foresee, which doesn't mean it's gonna happen by any means, but, so Water Street comes here. Right here, I see a roundabout right here, because, you've got an unusual intersection. You got Elm Street, Old Firehouse Road, Rubber Ave, Water Street. So this would be a perfect area for a roundabout. I think the Tuttle School is a perfect spot for a roundabout. Every time you go there, you're sitting at a stop sign, right? Me, I don't like to stop. I'd rather drive in a circle than stop. But I think that's a great spot. I think, where is it? This is, up by Mario's Pizza. I don't know, I don't think that's suitable for a roundabout, but we need something. I don't know what, but it's a complex intersection. So
Especially try to get to Mario's Pizza coming this way, because you gotta go down here, find down, turn around, come back around.
yeah, of course, he's got no parking, which is part of the problem, but this, I'm gonna say I like roundabouts everywhere else. This one, I don't know what it needs, but it needs something. What do you think about that, Joe?
I think we looked at it and I don't think it will fit easily in that location. The state is redoing that signal along with many signals in town, so it'll look a little bit better. Hopefully it'll function a little bit better as well.
Yeah. Well,
I actually have a question.
Yep.
I'm hearing you say a lot of buildup and everything, but what is it being filled in with?
what is what?
What
there?
kind of companies, what kind of businesses, anything like that? Do you-
Okay, so it's I'm gonna say there's gonna be a very large residential component here with some businesses. So we don't know until the proposals come up. I know what I like. I like Trader Joe's. I would love to see a Trader Joe's, but if anyone's proposing a Trader Joe's, they'll probably get my vote, but I would say that Trader Joe's would never come to Naugatuck before this. Now, they might, or they, yeah, so that's a good example because, in the past, they wouldn't come. Now they will. So these ball fields are probably the best sites in all of Naugatuck because they're right off the highway. And I don't know what they're gonna generate, but I know there's potential for some really good stuff there. And also I do want to say, everything we do, we want to, Mr. Karen is gonna like this, is gonna have a focus on the river, and improving it, enhancing it, featuring it. Naugatuck, our foundation is the river. And you haven't been here that long, but in the last 100 years, the river's been lost. Now it's back. Now it's pretty nice and it gets nicer every year. So the river is, I think something we want to focus on. I could see, you know, boat launches. I could see a million things in it. I love it.
They're gonna do anything with the new dam? That's way up the end there anyway. Behind Thurston.
Yeah, so,
I mean, it's all grown up and all.
so the answer is yes. But I don't know exactly what, but, so when you were young, when I was young, there were 2 beaches there.
It's one,
There were swimming areas and, fishing, you know, there's natural native trout in, Long River Brook. And that runs into Thurston's Pond in downtown. But let me show you another cool thing that is definitely in the works. With the Rubber Avenue project. So Thurston's Pond is somewhere about here. And I don't know if you know this, but when we acquire this, we acquire the water rights where we can take all the water from Long Meadow and Middlebury, and it used to flow.
there's a pipe right there going down.
There's a pipe there, yeah. So we're gonna own it, or have owned the rights to it. But I don't see, at least in my lifetime, that coming to fruition. Who knows for the future, but this brook, which has native trout in it, that comes from Thurston Pond, and then it crosses over under Rubber Avenue, right by the old park department, right below Peter J. Foley Lilly. So I think we're gonna build a little small park here. Don't forget, there's gonna be all new sidewalks here, bike paths, people riding bikes, walking. But I think we're gonna try and feature, I'm gonna say a trail or something cool along this brook, which is really beautiful. And it comes all the way down, goes under the event center into the river. So, your husband may remember this, but in a report that was done back in his day, that was a suggestion that was made, and I think it's a great suggestion, so I want to do it, and we looked at that, Jim, right? That's very doable.
I wasn't listening, I'm sorry.
He didn't even try to play it off, it's like, I didn't know it.
Well, I didn't want to say, oh, yeah, absolutely, Pete.
That's what you
I
said.
could, I don't know, absolutely, Pete, that's a
Very
great idea.
No, the Long Meadow Brook
Yes.
that goes behind the street department, your office, making a path and trail and
Oh, absolutely.
improving that.
Great
brook.
idea, Pete, I think it's excellent.
But that's something that we're evaluating.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I left out a lot. There's a lot of interesting little cool things that are being, you know, everything costs money. We now have a consultant who's gonna help us with the money. So I would say nothing is out of the question. And the more, anything that we can get funded, we'll do. Also, another plus on this, as part of the design project for the stormwater, we're gonna get the storm drainage fixed on Hillside Avenue, the old brick road. And then once that is fixed, we'll be able to decide what we're gonna do with that road. But there's no point doing anything with it until we fix the problem. And that's being designed right now, right?
Yeah, they're starting to put together the application package.
Yeah.
For the grants. Getting hungry.
Just out of curiosity, is there anything being done with the road here? As part of that, I mean, that's part of the preservation district. I mean,
Yeah, so what I just said is that the storm drainage for this is being worked on now. And that's gonna be fixed in the next 2 years. And when it's fixed, as part of this infrastructure project, then we can do whatever we're gonna do with the road.
It's a beautiful road, it's just, it's beat up.
Well, it's a beautiful building, it's a beautiful park, and I don't know if you know this park was designed by Frederick Olmsted, who did Central Park in New York City. And Mr. Whittemore hired him, and that's why we brought back those stone walls and the trees and everything up there. It's absolutely gorgeous. So, you know, there's a lookout right here. It's a very, you know, it's about as wide, probably not as wide as this section of the table. And it was designed to have a view right down here. In other words, right down through the green, the War Memorial, straight down to the library. And that view is still there, except there's 2 big trees that we didn't cut down. That, you know, we'll have to have a discussion at some point about those trees. So let me ask you a question. You're all planners, owners. You can answer the question. If you were going to create additional parking in downtown Naugatuck, where would you go?
Ramp garage.
Wrong. Only because
Because I want to
You
eat.
didn't know we were getting
a ramp garage costs $12 million. So for $1 million, you can get more parking than we need. So I'd rather spend $1 million than $12 million. I mean, I already know 3 spots that we're looking at, but I'm open to ideas.
So not a ramp garage.
No, just land. Even if you have to knock something down.
Well, you buy the bank.
Yeah, but that's not part of this. That's, yeah.
They're
That's,
on Water Street.
well, what, there's gonna be, I didn't tell you this. By the way, I could talk about this for months.
And he does.
You're trying to-
Neil has already pointed that out.
There's gonna be 50 parking spots right there. All right, I'm not gonna tell you the answer, I'm looking for ideas.
What about behind any of the buildings?
All right, this concludes the discussion unless there are any questions. Deference to.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
Very exciting.
I was listening.
Get that grant money.
All right, you good?
Yeah.
All good? All right, have a great night.
All right, see you later.
I'm working.
So new business B, that I just handed out to all of you. It's the, I think several of you were on the commission when Randy Bushka did his 4-family unit at the old Bushka lumber.
Yep.
Off High Street. He's now coming back before us. His goal is, or his plans are to tear down the old lumberyard building that was in the front of that, as he told us back then, and put in a mirror image of his building and another 4-unit in there. So we will have, this is his special permit application. I do want to forewarn you that we had a pre-application meeting with him, and there's probably going to be some adjustments coming to the plans that we're going to be seeing. All right, so we have to do this just like any special permit, accept it, defer to planning, and then set a public hearing for March. But there is the possibility the public hearing won't open until April based upon some changes that they have to do.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept the special application and set a public hearing date for March 16, 2022.
Oh.
at 6:05 PM for a 4-unit residential building. A 4-unit residential building for the property located at 550 High Street, applicant Ruth Realty LLC. Second. All in favor? Opposed? Pass.
And like I said, there is the possibility, we have 65 days to open the public hearing. So if he doesn't get his stuff done that we've suggested to him, that we may just delay, we won't open the public hearing in March, we'll open it in April.
So do you have a copy of the rear of the rear building?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what was that? Is it-
A mirror copy?
He's planning on 4 units just like he has now.
Anything else?
No, sir. Motion to adjourn.
Well, wait, we got a couple things. Last month, Eileen, you asked about us providing you with updated stuff. We did provide some stuff that came from Nordic Valley College. That we are starting to look at. There's, Lori has some stuff. She works on that downstairs with us right now in our office. But one of the big things, obviously, that we have to look at in the future right now is for cannabis and for what's going on with that. So she was going to talk just in a couple of moments here about what's out there and what's being suggested.
You could either, at the current time, you could either opt out, do a moratorium, or do nothing.
And the
That's
opt-out
what
would
we're
be
doing.
from the Board of Mayor and Burgesses.
Correct.
Say that again?
The opt-out plan would be from the Board of Mayor and Burgesses.
Oh.
That's who would opt out, not zoning.
We have until June 30th, 2024. So right now, based on our population, we could have 2 retailers and 2 cultivators. It's 25,000 up to 25,000. You can have 1 of each. We're over 25,000. We could have 2 of each. So there's different things that we might want to look into if we do a regulations, like how far from a church, a school. We could regulate all that if we do regulations on that. So those are things we're gonna have to start thinking about. Prohibit citing of cannabis establishments. We can reasonably restrict hours and signage, restrict proximity to religious institutions, schools, charitable institutions, hospitals, veterans homes, or certain military establishments. And then the retailer micro cultivator caps will be enforced by the towns through a special permit. So once we get our regulations in place, we can have them do special permit. Right now, they're kind of on the same line as the liquor permit.
They're basically with a liquor permit, they have to go to the state to get their liquor license. And that's what you're hearing about a lot now with in the news, is that people are going to the state trying to get
Their license.
their license to be able to be a retailer of some sort or cultivator or whatnot. Until they get those things, they really can't come before the towns. So that's a process right now that's going on with the state. There's a lot of money that these people have to put up in advance for their licenses.
I mean, basic license is $150,000 just the application.
Just to
fee.
apply, right?
And from what I understand, there's a very finite number of licenses that are even going to be allowed, and right now it's on a lottery basis. So
Right.
they're not even, so the probability of someone actually coming in Naugatuck for this is rather small. I do agree that we have to at least start planning.
We've had a couple
We've had
calls,
some people.
but again, when it's maybe 1 or 2. And we basically said to them, you're gonna have to go through your state process first.
Which, that's why they call. They have to make sure that the town will possibly allow it. And they have a location that they would want to put it in. So
Do we know how many towns, I know when this first came out, a lot of towns jumped on with not allowing and.
I think they did moratoriums. A lot of towns did
Right,
moratoriums.
Moratoriums.
Yeah, but some towns did opt out.
I don't know how many.
But when you opt out, I believe you also opt out of any potential of the tax money that would come in as a benefit. So that's why a lot of towns are rethinking it. It's like, we don't allow it, so we can't get the money that would benefit the towns from. So I'm not saying that's pro or con, I'm just saying that's what some of the towns have been looking at.
And the board of mayor and burgesses they're making the decision. And then
If
we'll
we
write
opt
it
out.
out.
If we opt out. And they haven't done anything. And,
So right now, they're not for it, they're not against it.
Yeah.
It's not, tell us.
So are we going to ask them to make a decision, or we can't do, in other words, we can't do anything until they make a decision, yes?
or they could choose to do nothing.
Or we could choose to do nothing. And then we would just basically go by our retailers' liquor license, where we allow liquor. Stores, not liquor
So
license.
if the board of mayor and burgesses do nothing, then we can't do anything.
Not necessarily. I think we can still potentially allow.
It's just something I'd like to start talking about. Between that and the other legislation that was passed between accessory dwelling units. Updating our regulations with parking requirements. That's what's in there.
Yeah, they're-
Oh, and also the training,
We did, well,
commissioner training.
we did see quite a bit. There's a lot of talk out there right now about the accessory dwelling units, which means having other, not just in-law apartments, but
They
having,
could be on the same lot, they could be attached, detached in the first floor.
you can build something above the garage. There's a lot of different things that the state's really pushing for that right now. A couple of years ago, there was, maybe 3 years ago, there was a big push on
When we first started.
granny pods, they were called, and a lot of towns opted out, this and that. And I think what happened is, all the towns did opt out, and the state said, oh, wait a minute, we're not gonna allow that. So they started coming back and saying, well, you gotta start allowing these accessory dwelling units on your properties, because they're realizing there's a bubble of people who are gonna be retiring. And they don't want them going to homes, retirement homes, or they want the ability for people to be at a home with family. So I think we're gonna be seeing a lot more of that, where they're basically gonna be requiring us to have regulations that will allow accessory dwelling units.
So there's state regulations on that already that we pull from, or?
Well, in here it says failure to adopt or opt out of compliant accessory apartment regulations. If the municipality fails to adopt new regulations or amend existing regulations or opt out by January 1st, 2023, any non-compliant existing regulation that would apply to accessory apartments becomes null and void, and such municipality shall approve or deny applications for accessory apartments in accordance with the requirements for regulations set forth in the provisions of subsection A to D of the new accessory dwelling statute. I think that we have to use theirs.
I think a lot
So
of
they
that's
want-
gonna come from COG, Nordic Valley COG,
They're working
giving
on
us a
a
lot
lot
of
of
guidance on this, so.
And then, like I said, that the training, we're gonna start, you have to have 4 hours of training. Those in office on 1/1/2023 must complete 4 hours by 1/1/2024 and every other year thereafter. So we're working on where we're gonna get that training from. Well, some people go to that CT you went to that, that's every 2 years, that's an 8-hour, well, all day affair on a Saturday. We're looking into CCM, which offers free, we're a member of CCM, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. So I'm looking into seeing if we could have you sign up for those classes, but they are during the day.
And it's gonna be all land use commissions, ZBA, zoning, planning,
That's
wetlands, all
Wetlands is not
commissioners.
included in this,
or wetlands now.
but they have training.
Yeah, they do have their training. So state of Connecticut is basically saying, people that want to be on these commissions, you're gonna have to do some training, which is a good thing, but it's gonna make it difficult for people who just don't want to put up with it, or, but there's gonna be a lot of people. We got, 169 towns, in the state of Connecticut. All towns are gonna have to start getting people trained or attend training.
All the state did was come out with guidelines of what training needs to be done. Process and procedures is it suggested 1 to 1.5 hours. Site plan surveys, maps, and architectural convention section is 1 hour. Environmental, agriculture, and historic resource section is another hour to 1.5 hours. So They have guidelines here, which I could pass out to everybody if you'd like. It's from Office of Policy and Management. And they're the ones that came out with this January 1st.
And there are a lot of organizations out there that are trying to figure out how do we get all this training now available for people.
Like during the day, a lot of you can't do during the day.
Right.
A lot of you don't want to do an all day Saturday, so we have to figure it out.
I mean, you're probably talking over 1,000 people. When you add 169 towns, and you might have 10 or 15 people per town who are on commissions that are gonna have to go train.
I'm doing online.
Well, I would assume there's gonna be a lot of online training and taking a class here or there. And offering some in person, and who knows what's going on with COVID and stuff like that. So that's down the pike for all of them.
That's it with those. We'll keep you updated as we get more information. And we're also working on an affordable housing plan, which needs to be submitted to the state by June 1st, 2022. So I might try to recruit somebody from here if they'd like to be on our committee.
One of the things, and with the mayor's presentation, he had mentioned when he presented to planning, he does want eventually no more than 2 people from a commission can be on his group that he wants to get together to look at things and come up with stuff. Because if there's more than 2 of you, it's considered a meeting of your commission. So that's why you can't, but alternates would be allowed or something. So we're gonna have to look for some of you that would like to volunteer to be part of that. For what they want, he wants to create for the overlay zone.
You know, they're looking at you, right?
Who?
They are, they're looking at you.
Me?
We're looking at
They're both looking at you, they're not talking to anybody
Well,
else.
And the reality is, the plans come in the end of April. They're gonna have to pick something first, or pick a project, or pick one of the developers. And then they gotta realize, okay, how do we make this project happen? So then they're gonna have to write regulations. So I don't know if it'll come right before this commission in May. It's gonna take a couple of meetings of that group to figure out what they want to do. But it might be something to be presented to us by the fall.
Where's he looking for a parking lot?
It's gonna be down over in that area. Obviously, it's gotta be associated with the transportation area, transportation hub. Things we pointed out before, you're gonna need potentially more bus transportation, more, parking for people coming in to park for the train service. So a lot of things are gonna be looked at.
Exciting.
Somehow the 3 of us, or the 4 of us, got roped into having to be on it. You looked at it and goes, well, you guys are on it. That's what we need.
When's the next meeting? March.
March 16th will be the next meeting. And like I said, we may not have, I did, just to let you know, I did talk to the people at One Stop Auto. They are planning to, we had asked them to be at that meeting. That's when, so hopefully he'll be there with his plan update.
Anything else?
Pepperoni time.
Accept the motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Stuff
Our meetings are
Not ready to go. Good night, Jen.
And I will say this, I did try to get Pete to come to the March meeting. I didn't think we'd have too much on it compared to what we had tonight.